Good evening. My presentation is on suicide prevention for military, veterans, and service members and their families in Western Mass. It is an evidence-based practice proposal for community-led reform. This project is dedicated to my son, Senior Airman Stephen Como, and to all those we've lost, as well as the service members and veterans who continue to struggle. My goal today is to share a community-led reform approach that integrates education, peer support, and a systematic change to reduce suicide risk. Veteran suicide rates exceed U.S. population, according to the VA 2023. Suicide is the leading cause of death in the DoD. Firearms is greater than 69% of veteran suicides, and stigma and dropout worsens risks. Suicide remains one of the leading causes of death among both veterans and active duty personnel. The VA reports that veteran suicide rates continue to exceed those of the general U.S. population. Within the Department of Defense, suicide is a top cause of loss of life. Firearms account for nearly 70% of veteran suicides, and stigma, along with treatment dropout, increases the risks. These statistics underscore the urgent need for reforms. On this slide, you're going to see the systematic failures. There's no mandatory follow-up after suicide attempts or high-risk events. Firearm restrictions inconsistently enforced. Leave denied during grief and crisis. And leadership not held accountable for lapses in care. Unfortunately, systematic failures are part of the problem. Service members are often not given mandatory follow-up care after a suicide attempt or high-risk evaluation. Firearm restrictions, while sometimes are ordered, are not consistently enforced. And leadership accountability, when protocols are ignored, need to stop and cease. Finally, research has shown that leadership's attitudes directly influences whether a service member seeks care. So commanders, leadership, sergeants, whoever demonstrates a leadership role, demonstrate that asking for help is a strength and not a weakness, can actually save lives. Based on these failures, several urgent reform demands are needed. First, mandatory long-term follow-up care, minimum 6 to 12 months. Centralized firearm restriction tracking and enforced storage. Leadership needs to track and enforce firearm restrictions and implement waiting periods and background checks for purchases of firearms on base and outside of base. Commanders must be held accountable when they fail to enforce protocols. And most importantly, the military must formally recognize suicides as a crisis affecting readiness. My peacock question in service members, veterans, and their families in Western Mass: how does an intervention of education, lethal means counseling, peer support, and telehealth compared to standards of care affect knowledge and stigma within the military? So our population is service members, veterans, families in Western Mass. Intervention is education, lethal means, counseling, peer support, and telehealth. My comparison, again, is standard care / resources. Outcome is knowledge, stigma reduction, engagement, safety behaviors, and the timeline is 6 months. The evidence-based practice intervention plan includes 4 major components: lethal means counseling and safety planning, embedded peer support specialists who have been shown to build trust and engagement, flexible access through telehealth and off-hour appointments, and training leaders to reduce stigma and support leave during crises. Together, these interventions target the key barriers identified in the literature I have researched. My proposed site and time frame: the sites would be Westover Air Force Base, Barnes Air National Guard, and the local VA clinics and community partners such as VA outreach programs, veteran luncheons, veteran community-based programs that are local in Western Mass that I could go and do an education and prevention program. Second, the time frame would be a 6-month pilot to set up, deliver, and follow up on my proposal. Population is active duty, National Guard, Air Reserves, and veterans, and then survivor families, and also veteran and active military families. The literature review highlights. The following literature that you see on the screen, the literature supports each component of my proposal. The firearm access triples suicide, and the stigma contributes to 41% of dropout. Peer support increases engagement. Telehealth is effective for PTSD and expanded access. Leadership training reduces stigma. Safety planning reduces suicide attempts by nearly half. And waiting periods for firearm purchase have been shown to save lives. These findings form the evidence base for this project that I propose. My analysis plan. So the design, I would do pre and post evaluations within 6 months, one in the beginning and one at the end of the 6 months. My outcome would be knowledge, stigma, safe storage, and engagement. Stigma reduction, safe storage practices, and engagement in care. Statistical methods I would be using is paired t-tests, t-squares, which streamline every step of the research process, and logistic regression. The qualitative would be peer support, thematic analysis. In addition, a qualitative analysis of peer support interactions will help us capture survivor perspectives and trust. Obstacles and mitigations. Let's start with stigma. Stigma, these are barriers, and that has been proven through many, many research studies. Stigma will be addressed by using peer mentors and leader endorsements. Scheduling conflicts will be addressed by offering telehealth and flexible times. Policy inconsistencies will be addressed through memorandums of understanding and centralized tracking. And data sharing concerns will be managed with de-identified metrics and aligned with IRB and quality assurance requirements. Dissemination and stakeholder buy-in are crucial. The audience will include base leaders, commanders, VA centers, community organizations, those surrounded with suicide prevention and mental health awareness, in addition to legislators. Products would be briefs, executive slide decks, infographics, and policy memos. Dissemination methods will include town halls, legislative briefings and advocacy, and veteran organization meetings to ensure a community-wide adoption. In conclusion, and the call to action. In conclusion, this proposal combines evidence-based practice with strong community partnerships to close dangerous gaps. By adapting this pilot, we can ensure follow-up care, enforce firearm safety, build peer support, and expand flexible access. Change requires command champions and enforceable policies. This work honors my son and all others lost to the battle within, and it aims to protect every service member and veteran still with us. These references represent the body of evidence that guided the proposal, including peer-reviewed outlines and peer-reviewed studies, and official data from the VA and the Department of Defense. At this time, if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer them for you. Thank you for your time.